And we're live. Oh, my cable is very visible. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the War Room 3.1.13. That's a lot of ones and a lot of threes.
Yes, 3.1.13.
Let's call it that. Let's call it that. That's better. And you can see our fancy new UI there.
Oh.
Yeah, that's very nice, isn't it? So, yes. Our fancy new bottom bar is telling everyone that I am Josh, DevComs.
And I am Paul, designer on Arena. Hey.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Josh.
Good to know you're here too. So we're gonna go through what we kind of normally do. So for those of you who are new, we hit the news, and we kind of let you know what's happened in the last couple of weeks, and then we'll go through some of the changes coming in the next patch, which are some pretty exciting stuff. I think people know really when you're here, there's going to be some balance changes.
Most probably.
I know
yes.
we hinted about some of them. Someone said, why DevComs and not CamelComs? Because if I was CamelComs, I would have nothing to say.
That's a lie and you know it.
So...
we'll get him on a camel at some point.
Really? Can you see that as a promotional video? Me crying on a camel? Like, oh, I probably didn't need to say crying. So, let's start off with the news. Let's jump right into it, because we've got a lot of balance to talk about.
Some bits, yes.
Some bits. So we'll recap really the dev newsletter that we put out yesterday. And if for you guys who haven't read it, if you head over to our community Reddit, you can read it there. But what we're saying there is that we're opening up some more direct developer to community interaction channels. And I know that sounds a little bit vague, but we'll have more on that in the future. But there's some cool stuff we're looking at, some cool stuff we're working on. A lot of stuff you guys have asked for. You've asked for more visibility into what's coming up, and we're looking into some new ways to do that. More visibility on bugs, looking into stuff to do that. So really what we're saying is this is the start of something, and hopefully it's going to snowball from here. But just so you know, hopefully this is the start of something pretty cool between the two of us. By that I mean us and the community.
Yes.
Not me and you.
It's an evolution, I believe, of the direct interaction, which we believe is going well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, we wouldn't be sitting here if it was going badly. We'd be hiding in some bunker.
It's always a two-way street. Dialogue is a two-way street. Yeah. So, as always, we welcome any sort of feedback that you guys have about how this is going and what do you find important to discuss and or improve upon.
Yeah.
So.
And actually, one thing that. It's like I've got a long strand of golden hair. One thing that we did as part of this is the matchmaking question that we've asked the community.
Yes.
So matchmaking's always been a hot topic. Actually, it kind of died down recently. There's not been a huge amount of discussion compared to how much there used to be. But there is still a lot of chatter about it. We want to make sure that the matchmaking is the best it can be. So we asked you guys on the dev newsletter. Let me find my question. How do you feel about the current matchmaking times? Are they too short or too long? How open would you be to a slight queue time increase in favor of better matchmaking quality? Brackets, better unit type distribution, better party distribution, better skill distribution. So if you guys have any answers to that, like obviously you can throw them in the chat, but the best place is probably to put them on our Reddit, where we can link that out to the designers. And
we always want to improve upon things, even though there is not as much negative feedback when it comes to matchmaking recently, which means that very likely we have improved upon. That we never settle. We always want to improve to the best. We always perfection is unattainable. You can strive to it, but this question is going into that direction. We're trying to include again part of your feedback and allow you to have a direct influence onto how do we go about calibrating that aspect of our game. So yeah,
absolutely. So that was one big part of it, was us opening up and trying to ask more of those questions. And don't be surprised if you see more questions like that in future dev newsletters.
Yes. We're always trying to be careful with these questions because again this can be interpreted in ways that are not always very positive, but the intention of this is to allow you guys to have a say into how do we go about and straight up get your feedback on this component. So yeah, what is more important? How okay are you? Like how many actual minutes are you okay, or seconds are you okay with waiting in a queue time? How important is party, skill, unit type diversity, tier diversity when it comes to matchmaking? All of this is until in the future we will have better, more advanced systems to calibrate that. For now, we have to make do with your direct feedback. So yeah, that's this step.
It is. And it's a pretty cool step. So, unless anyone has any... So now I'm also hoping that we can do more little mini Q&A sections. So if anyone has any questions about that kind of news, about that stuff we've been talking about, feel free to throw it in.
I would like to add on a little bit more if I'm allowed. And
You're
yes,
absolutely allowed.
we are aware, again, you have iterated in the past and gave us feedback with regards to certain unit types in certain games are not well distributed. We are tackling that in a separate way. So for example, some of you were very vocal about the fact that you don't like when parties take up, you have an entire party full of elephants, and that's really debalancing the game. We are aware of that, and we will have a separate we have separate tasks in the backlog for tackling those situations. So if we ask the matchmaking queue time question, that doesn't mean that we're disregarding other things. It's just,
someone raised a good question that's completely tangential to what you just said, but it's something I know we spoke about today.
Okay.
Someone said, are there any improvements to units getting routed even though they don't get touched by enemy units? Which is something that I think we were actually discussing today.
Yes. Yeah, so we have investigated, we've seen your clip when it comes, I think that's artillery being routed while nothing is present. That's a bug that we have figured out. It's basically when you assemble an engine, or when you go to grab an engine with your crew, if any of the entities of that crew for whatever reason are not close to it, the unit hitbox blows up. So if, for example, you have an entity which is lost behind a barricade of sorts, or lost in a forest, and is still struggling to get back to the main main unit, the hitbox, unfortunately, it's a bug at the moment, and we're looking forward in the future to fix it. The hitbox becomes huge, so you might have weird situation where I'm getting flanked out of nowhere, but in reality 1 or 2 of your soldiers are left somewhere behind, and those got touched by the enemy. Yes, it's a bug. We have seen it. We have information about it. We will be looking in the futures to fix it as quickly as possible.
And we've got, as well as at the end of this, we've got our second round ever of community-led bug fixes. So we'll be talking about them too, and hopefully there's some issues that you guys have been talking about in there as well. Well, there definitely are, because they're from the community.
Yes.
So I think that we will... It doesn't look like anyone really has any questions about Dev Newsletter or anything that's happened in the last couple of weeks, so I think we'll jump into the balance, if you're happy with that.
Yes, sir.
So we will start with Leo, if you want it to pop up, or if you want to just have a little word.
Before we go into the details, into the fine details of what we're about to see, the approach, the general approach for this, the high-level approach for this 3.1.13 balance implementation was try to improve and focus as much as possible on the high-tier competitiveness aspect and balance of high tier. So we will see some commanders. That's not the only thing, but the main purpose and the main goal is that. So you will see some commanders, specifically Leonidas, Kinane, and Ambiorix, Leonidas Bash, Kinane Hunt, and Ambiorix from the Shadows being touched upon. Then you'll see also Caltrops being touched. Again, this is a generic, broad, not just tier 10, but it's mainly geared and focused towards high skill competitive. Then we have touched a lot of specific ad hoc tier 9 and tier 10 units, the elephants, war dogs. I believe the war dogs we have removed prowl and give them a slam. I think the tier 9 war warriors, or yeah, the tier 9 war dogs. The Carthage javelins have also been touched upon, the tier 9 and 10. They didn't have caltrops, that was making them uncompetitive. We have fine-tuned some of their unit abilities because they were too weak. I believe we also have increased the base speed of the tier 10 elephant, and if I recall correctly, the tier 10 javelin as well. But you will see it on the details. Long story short is, focus on the high tier and try to, as much as possible, this is not the final step as always, but try as much as possible to improve the situation by tackling the most direct problems that we have identified so far. So when it comes to, we have had both player feedback and some metrics were underlining some issues in the high tier. It's always important to remember that when it comes to metrics for high tiers, the frequency, the play frequency is not as high, so it's more difficult to calibrate well on what exactly is the right course of action for those. But let's break into some of the details of.
Okay, so let's go straight to Leo and his shield. There we go.
Yeah.
Is there
So
a video that plays in the background?
with Leonidas, we found from observing tournaments and direct player feedback that he doesn't scale as well as we would like him with high tiers. One of the issues was specifically shield bash. Before this change was rolling attack versus defense. The problem with that is that it wasn't scaling itself on the base ability or through talents. It wasn't scaling melee attack, but a lot of opponents could either debuff him or increase their melee defense.
Yep.
So debuff through fear or increase through fortify or increase the melee attack. All of that, so he now his shield bash becomes a true strike. What does that mean? He will no longer roll melee attack versus enemy defense. So regardless of if the enemy is fortified, or if you've got fear on you, or if he's got oath, you will always shield bash. This will allow him to scale better or ignore the scaling of other opponents through all the way into the high tiers. Remember that the damage always still rolls versus enemy armor. So while you might see an increase in his damage output, he still rolls versus armor.
Okay.
So yeah, he's going to become, and you might argue, well, there were other solutions. Yes, we could have increased the scaling of melee attack on specifically shield bash, but we wanted to make it unique, and this is so far the only commander and unit ability that really does not roll melee attack versus enemy defense. The gore, I think, the elephant gore is similar, but that is even more unique because that is also very tied to the animation. So there is no, that's more of than just combat rolls. So yeah, he became very unique in that sense.
So some people are talking about how this will affect pikes and how will it affect dropping pikes. So does that mean
still the same behavior as before? We want on purpose. That's his unique in a sort of a way. Leonidas Pikes has this unique perk where on purpose you bash the enemy away for you to be able to drop the pikes down. And while some people like it, some people dislike it, and I understand. I can see both point of views. If you dislike it, I would argue that the changes to pikes that you will see further in the details will help tone that negative sentiment down.
But before we get to that, we have, I believe, Kanani?
Yes.
Roll the thing. Oh, he's looking so... Whoa! What happened there? Blimey, this is not a level of production I was ready for.
What's up with Kinani's hand? So we have some new metrics for Kinani's hand, and we have noticed that the general usability and use frequency throughout the battle was very, very low, and we started to question ourselves why exactly. And initially we believe that for the starting out players is not the aspect of providing visibility on an enemy is very, how should I put this, is very skill dependent, is very high level. You really need to have an understanding of the game to really figure out how you're supposed to use the hunt intelligently. So with that in mind, we decided to just make it more clear or make it more simplistic to use for a starting out player. We added minus 20% missile block on the base of our ability. We've also increased the base targeting range from 75 to 95. We felt that in the lower tiers, it's the targeting range is too low and it doesn't fit quite right with. You can shoot an enemy, but at the lower tiers you can't really apply hunt too well on him. So we wanted to bring that up into line with the base range, generally speaking, base range of the archers. Remember, this varies over time. And we've reworked the targeting range talents to scale better over tiers. What does that mean? That means that it was peaking up too much at the end, so we tried to normalize it. So you at tier 6 you're already getting into the 105 targeting range with it, whereas before it was kind of at the end of the talents. So we spread it, we tried to spread it more evenly across tiers. While the base has increased, the top end hasn't gone that high up. So whereas before the top targeting range was 139, now we got to 149, which is, if I'm not mistaken, also the range, generally speaking, the max range of Slinger. So you'll still be able to, yeah, it will be an interesting gameplay there against Slinger specifically, because whereas before you had more difficulty in applying hunt to them, now you will actually be able to hunt a Slinger and figure out, even if you don't have the range to shoot at him, at least you will be able to track his movement and use that intelligently against him. We also opened up the ability on all units. We already had it on missile units and cavalry. It felt like too much of an artificial limitation, and when you have spears and or pikes with Kinane, you can only use rapid advance, and that felt very lackluster. So now we've decided to also open it up for all units. This is also in the attempt to convey that when you play Kinane, especially for a starting out player, you can hybridize a build. You don't have to play, if you're playing solo, you don't have to play 3 archers combo. You can take 1 spear and still maintain your effectiveness up.
I can see something from the chat saying that there's some issues with hunt not applying when you click on people. And if that's something you're noticing, definitely put it in the bug stuff, because I don't think I've seen that reported, and I don't think because it's not reported, it's not been logged on our side. So if you are noticing that, and if you have any videos of that kind of stuff, absolutely throw it over to us.
Please.
And we'll be able to log it up. So if we are finished with Kanani?
Yeah, I think I've explained sufficiently this change.
I think the Ambiorix one is very short. Ambiorix. Yeah. There we go.
The firing arc from the shadows was a little bit high, and in competitive scenarios it felt like it's too easy to. It was very particular to use. You could only really use it against very static enemy units, and this felt off-putting. So we've minimally toned that down, so it feels a little bit more. I don't know what's the word. Fluent. It's just more natural to use it. Yeah, you don't have to wait as much. You will see when you use it that hopefully it makes more sense.
And there's the lovely new icon as well that was introduced in the last patch.
Right.
Which we didn't have on hand last time, but there you can see one of them.
Yes. This is straight up based on your feedback, by the way. Yeah, we've noticed again, your feedback from competitive scenarios was very clear that this ability is lackluster and in high tier, in high skill context scenarios. So hopefully it's more usable now.
Someone was saying, what would happen if the angle was at 100%?
You'd shoot into the sky.
And then would it come straight back down?
At some point. We actually did that. We actually had some fun with it. Yeah, I showed it to one of the designers and they went like, Paul. It's like, come on. Yeah, it was fun, but yeah, it still needs to be usable.
Okay. It'd be like showering on yourself, you know?
Yes. And it's
which
90
most people
degrees.
Do. They shower on themselves. So I believe next up is we have the ranged stuff. So changes to ranged. Do you want to preface that, or do you want to jump into it?
Yeah, I believe we're talking about reducement in shield armor.
Yeah.
If that's the case. So first, yeah, again, when it comes to range units, we've noticed that there are some stat deltas that were too great. And what do I mean by too great? The speed delta between a Greek archer, particularly in tier 7 and 8, and a barbarian archer was too great, to the point where in competitive scenarios it was kind of like the choice was too binary, was too like high skill context. Mobility becomes the most important stat, and speed specifically becomes the most important stat. If you have too much of that, it's almost like you invalidate the other option. The Greek archers were just simply too slow by comparison with the barbarian archers. And then at the same time, some of the how should I put this? Some of the formatting of some of the defensiveness and tankiness of the archers was off. So again, we had some Greek archers which were supposed to have high armor and be slower, and basically it's almost like a medium or a heavy archer. But when compared with the amounts of armor that the barbarian archers had on their shields, it was like, okay, I have the tanky archer, which is kind of out competed in terms of defensiveness by what's supposed to be a more agile archer. So long story short, we try to bring those deltas, we have tried to reduce those deltas with the purpose of allowing gameplay in competitive scenarios to come out more. It was way too much barbarian archers in competitive scenarios, and too little of the other. So now we've tried to bridge the gap together. What does that mean in actual implementation? I believe we have toned down speed.
Should we go to the...
Yes, please.
Let's hit the slide. Whoa! Are we going to have to disappear for this?
Sorry?
I'm just working out if we're covering any words.
Nah, it's... I think
I think that's everything.
Yeah, so again, we've reduced the speed differences between Greek and barbarian archers. You will see there is another complete detail list with the exact numbers that have changed. For now, you will see that some Greek archers' speed has been slightly bumped up, and some barbarian archers' speed has been slightly bumped down. We have reduced the armor on all archers and slingers by 25%. It just felt that they had just as much armor as normal unit. The multiplier on their shield armor was too high, and that was just conceptually was not right. And then we've taken particular attention to what I was talking about earlier, which is the Carthage javelins, which were not really in a good place competitively. Rapid throw duration has been increased from 6 to 8 seconds. Skirmish tactics cooldown decreased from 35 to 20 seconds. Skirmish, if you think about skirmish tactics, it's somewhat similar in functionality to a dash, so it was, the even most important bit, and this might seem like a small change, but I'm hoping that it will have a massive impact. We have changed caltrops. How have we changed caltrops? They don't break charges anymore. So if you take cavalry or infantry and you charge over caltrops, they will not break your charges anymore. But, and this is the important bit, they will slow down your unit, particularly your charge. So the intention now is, if you are a javelin or an archer player or whatever unit has caltrops, and whereas before you were just dropping it on your feet and you're just like moving 1 meter away, and you were on purpose baiting out cavalry charges because it was so much of a safeguard, now you will get very much punished for that. Now the intention is to use caltrops intelligently and move away from them, and they will slow down the charge, which means that if you have enough distance from the caltrop, it will still be effective. You will have slowed down the incoming charge and maybe even allow you to dodge it out of the way. So you will see that we have increased the speed debuff from minus 40 to minus 60%, but it will not be so like binary as it was before. You will now have to think a little bit more like and take some distance from it. It's not just I drop it and I'm like, I can just freely shoot the cavalry. So now you'll have to think more about how you go about placing caltrops, and there is now hopefully some sort of a way to balance it more. Is if it's perfect or not, we'll see based on your feedback. It's very important to remember that War Dog charges are not affected by this. We felt like they should get an exemption from this, just thematically, the way they work, the way they avoid, they interact with phalanx and whatnot. It felt like thematically they should be able to ignore those kind of things, just like they do with stakes, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, no more breaking charges with caltrops. If you're derping with range units, you will get punished by cavalry units.
So if you want to get rid of us for a second, Mattis, I know that you guys really like you like all the numbers and you like seeing all of the little specifics of how these are actually affecting units, and we didn't want to take that away from you, but there are a lot of units. So if you are really interested in kind of exactly how this is going to affect all of the archers, if you switch the slide, Mattis, there it is. There are all the archers and all the numbers. It's not just archers. I think it's there's some other range in there as well, which is why I called it range changes. Yeah, there's some slingers.
Yeah.
So there are all of your numbers, guys. If you're really interested, print screen now, and you can get this later because we're going to go off of this in a second.
Carthage skirmishers got caltrops.
They do.
Finally.
And one thing, so we will be moving on to... Oh, whoa! Flipping around the cube there. We will be moving on to Cav now, I believe.
Yes.
So, do we want to go? Should we go there, or do you want to talk a little first?
Yeah, I'm contemplating how to phrase the next slide or the introduction of the next slide.
Oh, now you might as well go to it. Now you flip to it. They've already seen it, Mattis.
From reviewing metrics, Cav have a survivability issue. Hopefully, together with the caltrops change and the straight up HP increase on cavalry, now they should have less of a difficult time surviving. Again, with caltrops breaking the charges and slowing them down, you could pin down a cavalry unit and just javelin it down, and yeah, they were simply not surviving enough according to our metrics. So with that in mind, we bumped up a little bit their HP. We'll see how this pans out when it comes to survivability. And then the second most important aspect that we've done to them is, again, we had too much of speed delta, just like with the archers. Some scaling was just too extreme, to the point where Arminius Cavalry, or was the expression GTFO or something like that? Yeah. So it's like, that's not cool. Like, especially in competitive scenarios, and from watching tournaments, there was it felt a little bit too much like speed is everything, and barbarians particularly scale up so much. Is they have the Arminius momentum, they have infiltrate, they have two consumables we scale that, they have equipment we scale this, and then they had their base speed, which was scaling to like, if I'm not mistaken, you can get to like 12 or from 12 to 15 speed, depending on if you're using dash and charge at the same time, and that was destabilizing too much high skill context play. It might seem, depending on your point of view, it might be too strong, it might be too little. We will see. We will see how this pans out. Some barbarian cavalry, I think, if I remember correctly, specifically the Gungnir chargers and harbingers had very particular behavior when it comes to metrics and also gameplay. Some players found them extraordinary, while some players found them impossible. Yeah. And this was also a little bit reflected in metrics. What do I mean by that? Some players love their insane speed and charge capacity, but they had so low missile block that if you were getting clipped by ranged, that was it for you, and it was way too skill dependent. So with that in mind, we've toned down a little bit their speed, but at the same time we have increased their base their base block levels. This is just one example of the many other changes that have happened to cavalry, and maybe we have it in the next slide.
So again, like with the archer one, we know you guys love your numbers, and I gotta say there's a lot of cav. Go on. Oh boy.
Yeah. So you will see both together here. We've gone through like every unit and what has changed, both HP and run speed. Yes, the changes are not as drastical. The intention is to again allow the flavor to still be there without having it completely flipped on its head. We don't want, like, it can't be just Arminius Cavalry and nothing else.
Yep.
So
And
yes.
you can see the missile block chance increase there on the Gungear charges.
Yes, there are some exceptions to
And
these
Harbingers,
rules,
yeah.
so not all the cavalry, some of them have been touched more than others. So you will see what's, yeah, so for example, Macinista's Guard also got its speed reduced. So, yeah, which is not, we'll let you guys dig through this. And
Yeah, there's a lot of numbers here for you guys to have a look at. So, with that, I think we'll move on to some of the changes we spoke about in the dev newsletter, the Pike changes. I believe it's
Oof.
Pike's next. Is it Pike's next? It's Pike's next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to Pikes, we still, yeah, we've spoken about it in the previous stream, if I'm not mistaken, as well, about, yeah, how it's still not where Pike's behavior, and specifically Pike Phalanx, was not in a state with which we were okay with. So we've done again some additions on top of that. Pike Phalanx now generates fatigue just like spears, and their melee attack bonus has had a considerable change.
Yeah.
Yes. So the intention is, again, we kind of went back to the drawing board. We were like, what's the intention with them? Because lightsabering and chainsawing was not the initial design of the Pike Phalanx, but unfortunately it went kind of there. So with that in mind, now with the addition of fatigue and the reducement in the melee attack, if you try to exploit too much the Pike Phalanx behavior, and you can spin around and whatnot, once you get to over 75 fatigue, you won't be able to do the knockback anymore, so enemy units will get to you. And at the same time, because of the reducement in melee attack bonus, you won't be able to apply, you will still be able to knock back if you miss, but you won't be damaging.
Okay.
So yeah, another I think important bit which I don't see in here is we have slightly reduced the hitbox size, or what's the technical term? I don't remember. We have reduced the hitbox size of the Pike Phalanx, so it's slightly smaller because it was too easy to overlap, and it was allowing for too extreme of a DPS output when fatigue was not applied. So with that change, we've tried to cap the DPS output that a Pike unit can do regardless. And some other changes that have come to fit in with that properly. Phalanx deposition now freezes fatigue regeneration when active. Pygnosis reduces rate of fatigue regeneration by 60% while active, and yeah, some other changes.
Yeah.
When it comes to this, I'm curious what's the next slide, because I want to follow up into the to talk about spear specifically.
Is the spears one the next slide?
Other unit ability changes.
And what's after that?
Nothing.
Oh no.
That's all right.
Well then, maybe you just talk about the spears one.
Yeah, so we've had feedback with regards to Roman spears going a little bit. Yeah, we've had some feedback with regards to the Roman spears going a little bit mental when it comes to vengeance, and yeah, we've done. You'll see in the detailed notes that we have tackled those issues. Are they final? No. Some players suggest that we should be brutal and just take our vengeance. Yes, that's a quick fix, but in our opinion, it's a brutal and very unpolished change. We're very much one-siding the use of vengeance on spears, and we want to resolve that combat mechanic rather than like ignore it and take out vengeance from them. So we have tackled what we have done is reduce the damage, the straight up damage on Roman spears, and we have tackled the Roman phalanx, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So you will see all of this in the detail
Someone's
notes.
asking a question. What would you say the difference is between pike and spears after this change?
Good question. Pikes is the more extreme version of spears. So where spears are more melee combat oriented, they're more capable in withstanding melee combat. Pikes are less. Pikes, if they don't have their frontal phalanx down, they're less capable in melee combat. Whereas spears should not be as dependent on top of that. With spears, you can take spears militiades and really be quite aggressive with it. So it's quite pleasing in that aspect. When it comes to pike, a little bit less, because they're more reliant on their pike phalanx. Again, the intention with the pikes was to have a more extreme and more hold the line, hold that position kind of unit than spear. So yeah, that is what I would say is the high level difference between pikes and spears.
And for the Roman spears, the exact stats, which I kind of noticed this when I noticed that there were no icons on my presentation, is that I think it's an older version. But the exact differences were for the Triari. Oh no, don't worry about it. For the Triari, the melee damage has been reduced from 201 to 196, and for the Auxilia Palantina, the melee damage has been reduced from 229 to 219.
Yeah.
So what are we expecting to see from those changes?
Less chainsawing, less DPS output capacity while in phalanx.
Yep.
You'll still be able to use vengeance, but it will be less mental than before, or at least we hope so. Yeah, and again, I don't want to bank on it, but I believe we've also touched upon the Roman phalanx.
Yes.
So, the melee attack, if I recall correctly, this wasn't a change done by me, but if I recall correctly, the melee attack has went down on the Roman phalanx. So again,
yes, the plus 5% melee damage buff has been removed.
Yeah. So less DPS output while in the Roman phalanx.
Yep. So I think we'll move on to the others section, which it's kind of a summary of those other changes you were talking about at the start. We can't see it up on here.
Why was that?
There's the Windows browser. I think you've dragged a thingy onto us. Look at our screen, and you'll see it's the Windows browser.
It's all right.
There we go.
Yeah, so a deeper level. Is this a deeper level? No, I think these are some very unique ad hoc changes to some of the abilities. So yeah, and units. As we were saying before, Warg Warriors, Tier 9 War Dogs have had their Prowl replaced with Slam. Prowl we saw is not really getting too much use and didn't feel like really useful. We strapped on Slam. Fenrir's Howl has been changed a little bit. Now ground target ability with a range of 40 meters and an area of effect of 10 meters. Elephants, again, the Tanit, we saw their speed was too low, and because of that they were a little bit like in terms of metrics they were kind of falling off a cliff when it comes to their competitiveness. We also saw one of their abilities was questionable. It's also important to remember that to keep in mind that tier 10 ability sorting will be coming in soon, so when it comes to the elephant...
Well, that's what someone was saying. Now we can use it when it's in melee, despite it being removed. So yeah, obviously it's a change. Even if the ability isn't being used, it still wants to be balanced for if it's introduced in the tier 10.
Yes, correct. So you will be still able to get this ability if you think that's the most adequate ability to use for your scenario when the tier 10 ability sorting will be coming in, and that should be coming in hot. So yeah, we try to make it more competitive, and we increase the range speed, the run speed, sorry, and we have replaced Bestial Defense with Stampede, so he should be good now. And then again, metrics review on some of the abilities. The Kanae Chant again was getting very little use and didn't seem to be fitting well. How should I put this? From a usage perspective, it wasn't flowing right in the heat of combat. So we have now changed it so now a duration ability rather. We have made it a duration ability rather than a toggle, and it is also usable in melee. And this is for the Kanai-chan. And then I think we have a lot of others. Do we?
No, I think that's it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, because we've spoken about the caltrops,
Yeah,
of course.
we've done everything.
Yeah.
That is all my pages. I hopefully haven't missed anything there. There's a couple other things in the patch as well that we can talk about.
Okay.
So that's all the balance going in the patch, I believe. And that is a hefty 28 minutes worth of balance there.
Okay.
That was.
I
feel very balanced. I'll tell you that. So let's talk about some of the other stuff that's coming in. Thank you very much for taking us through that, Paul. I imagine you did need a drink of water very soon after that.
No, I'm cool.
Oh, wow.
Another 2 hours if
As
you
a
got.
cucumber. So the first thing we've changed is that we've noticed that there's a lot of people who are disconnecting at the very start of a match and then coming back in, and because of that they've been flagged as AFK. So one thing that we've done is we've increased the time limit on loading. So what this does is those who find that they were loading in the last couple of seconds after the game had actually loaded, and then they would come in, the thresholds have been increased so that they should now load in during the loading time and they won't be flagged as AFK. And that will be really useful, but overall it shouldn't increase your loading times going into a battle at all, because it'd still be, you know, when everyone loads in, and if someone's disconnected and actually disconnected, that won't affect it at all. So hopefully that will reduce some of the frustrations there. The other one as well is I know something that we've seen for a fairly long time, people asking for this, and that is the unit tier selection limitation, which is all of those frustrated posts we've seen from you guys where someone's bought a tier 9 unit, a tier 9 unit, and a tier 1 unit, and you send them to me and you're like, ban him, and I'm like, I'd rather we changed the feature there, and we have. So now to be eligible for matchmaking, you have to have a +1, -1 tier range on the units you've selected in your loadout.
Yes.
And that's just to help with those little fringe cases where people would be bringing tier 1s, tier 5s, and tier 10s, which was frustrating for everyone, right? It's frustrating for them because they've probably done it by accident, and for the people who have to play with them, but not for the people who had to play against them.
Yeah,
they probably enjoyed it.
This is one of the other issues when it comes to matchmaking, because very often when I read feedback, it's flagged as a matchmaking issue. Why do I have a tier 2 unit? We are in a tier 7 game, and this will be blocking directly before even we get to matchmaking. We like to call this. I think this is an auxiliary system that's supposed to support matchmaking. I think we call it matchmaking preamble or something like that. So this is one of those rules that's coming in that preamble or pre-matchmaking selection filter. We'll have some other hopefully in the future added, but those are still to be defined.
So some people are also talking about the reconnecting, and this is something we have spoken about, which is, so currently you can reconnect if you disconnect but you're still in the battle. You can't reconnect if you have exited the battle, or if the game has crashed, or if the game's shut. I believe that's something it's on the backlog of something we'd investigate, but with reconnecting we wanted to get that version out that we know we could do relatively quickly.
Yes.
I say relatively quickly because it still took a long time, but as well as we've always got to make sure that we're not putting in a feature that takes weeks and weeks, and actually there's only like 1 or 2% of people it's actually affecting, in fact even less than 1%. So while it is something we're looking at and it is something that's definitely in the backlog, I think that there are other things that we definitely want to put in before that.
Yeah, if I'm interpreting this right, the idea is that sometimes while you might feel we're giving you an incomplete feature, for us the way we see it is give them improvements as quickly as possible. Some systems are very big and are very time intensive, so the question is, would you like to wait 6 months for a complete feature? Or, I'm not saying a broken feature. I'm not saying we're going to give you an early feature which is broken. No, but if we feel like and we consider that a certain system can be released over multiple iterations, we will try to do that to the best of our capacity. So it's not always, how should I put this? While you might be surprised by certain things, the intention for us is for you to have improvements as quick as possible, even if they're not. It might seem, from your point of view, incomplete.
Someone said, what did Josh say about reconnecting? Because I couldn't hear half what he said. Effectively, what I said was, we've heard that you want to reconnect outside of the battle, and it's on the backlog. So let's talk about the bug fixes. going into this patch, because I always like this bit because I get very attached to the bug fixes, because a lot of them are ones that, you know, I follow from birth, well, unfortunate birth, to death. So the first one is, I'm not sure if this was in the last patch or if it is just in this one, but it's definitely fixed now, and that is light artillery will no longer fire when all the crew are dead. Now, I'm pretty sure I said that again 2 weeks ago, but if I didn't, ignore what I'm saying right now, if I did, it is definitely fixed in this version, if it wasn't in the last one. Another one as well, that this is something we've seen people, I saw a lot of frustration about this in bug reports. When you Alt-Tab back into the game, and then you can't activate abilities, and you just keep spamming chat, all that stuff, the cause of that was that when you Alt-Tabbed back in, the game was recognizing that Alt was being held down the entire time. So that's been fixed. When you Alt-Tab and then click into the game, it will no longer keep your ability state active and spam chat. So it won't just keep saying, like, my ability's ready, when you're trying to activate it, which is going to be lovely. So we've also fixed some graphical glitches during pre-deployment. A couple of those pictures were sent, so thank you to the guys who did that. We have removed the engineering experts trait from heavy and light artillery units.
Oh, that's so frustrating for me personally.
There you go.
It's one of those, I don't know where this data, like sometimes that you have data, a little bit of data, what's the word? It's not perfect integration, so sometimes you have some of the things that are not supposed to be there seep from other parts, but I'm diverging too much, sorry.
What else we got? We've got, the slow effects by caltrops will now slow charging cavalry units. Don't know why that's in bug fixes. Let's see. The checkbox on consumables panel will no longer shrink when select plus dragging restock consumables.
That's, yeah.
And that's a very specific bug. And I believe that's it for the community bug fixes. We have some more coming as well in the next patch as well. So thank you for everyone. And also those of you who worked on the bug bounty. The repro steps have been sent over for that. I believe the Pike Phalanx one dropping we were talking about today. And the other one, the camera turned around, actually, we managed to have a successful, I think, so one of the QA guys downstairs is the bug bounty steps that we got back. They were working on my computer, and they were working on someone else's computer, but someone else put those steps in, they couldn't get it to work. And actually it turned out there was another slight missing key that we've now identified. Thanks to having two computers different, we could see what was different in the settings. So thank you to everyone who helped work on that as well. That made us a huge leap forward to fixing that. So hopefully those two will come in a version near you, those two fixes.
Yep.
But once again, like with the Skippy or with the Perseverance stuff, right, it depends on the sheer scale of how much that fix is.
I would like to add, before we move forward with answering other questions, that it's very important to remember that the way we fix caltrops is slow effects now apply to charges. So, period. Slow effects apply to charges, cavalry charges and infantry charges, which means that if you have another slow effect beside caltrops, you can apply it to
You look
charge.
like you're hinting something at me.
I'm not hinting, I'm trying to explain that if you, for example, with this change, if you will have the skill to apply properly fear to a cavalry to a cavalry charging, then you will slow down its charge. Do you have all that skill to dodge all of that and micro all of that? That's up to you. But I don't want it to be a surprise for people and feel like we're disingenuous because we've mentioned caltrops, but really in effect is all slows will apply to cavalry charges and infantry charges. So yeah.
Someone else is asking when the patch is due, and that is right now. It is due next Thursday.
Yes.
And it's looking good for that date as well. We'll let you know if anything changes there, but usually we're pretty good. I don't think we've missed a Thursday in like 3 or 4 months.
Yes,
since we started.
We try to have our to be as solid as we can with the release cadence, and hopefully, we've been good so far.
We have. I think that's pretty much it from the patch.
Yes.
I'm willing to turn this over now to the lovely Twitch chat. If you are watching this on Facebook or YouTube, and if you want to ask us a question, I used to have like 3 different iPads, but it was way too impractical. So now, if you want to ask a question and you don't just want to watch, head over to Twitch and ask us a question. Here's one. Josh, what will this mean for Elephants and Arty in regards to the Pike changes?
you will, when it comes to the pikes versus elephants, the reduction in the pike hitbox cones hopefully means that you won't be able to melt elephants as quickly as you used to before. We will see if, yeah, we will see how you guys feel about that. But that's the intention. It felt a little bit too artificial. The elephant would clip through your pike phalanx and it'll be like they're being touched by a laser. So hopefully that has been improved upon. Again, we look forward to your feedback.
Let me I'll quickly blast through a couple. Yep. Why can't we report some players / Russians on EU server? And that's because of region lock at the moment. But that's when region lock is gone. That will probably be something you'll be able to do. Can you shout out to Sasha from us players and say that we love her? Of course I can.
We will.
When will the tier band between 8 and 9 be restored? There's no plans for that, and as far as I'm aware, it's not something the wider community wants. If you do, let me know. But I remember the joy, the joy when we took that one out.
It's for us. It feels like very much like the. We like to joke about it that the tier 9 and 10 are kind of like the how should I put it nicely, because I don't want to come off as insulting, but it's almost like the freak show. It's like 9 and 10 are the super elite players, and it's kind of like it feels like it's better to have them do their own thing than let them loose on the lower tiers. But we're joking about that.
Yeah.
If you have a clear and different opinion and you believe that 8 and 9 should be put together, we're always listening.
Someone I saw say a question of, you buff Sarmatians again. Did you see Hazu's 1v2? This is a very specific question. Did you watch Hazu's 1v2 Barbarian tier 5 with Sarmatians on tournament?
I don't remember that specific scenario, but I do know that some of the cavalry have been less buffed than others. But cavalry across the board, HP of cavalry across the board has been increased. Some of them have been increased less than others. I leave it up to you to figure out which have had less of a reduction.
Someone else said, and in a similar vein, what is your meaning of competitive play?
What's my meaning of competitive play?
That's a pretty deep question.
Competitive play for me is, at the moment, we are in an incipient phase of that. And what do I mean by that? You can see on the tournaments that some of the various tournaments that we have organized by the community, that it's very much in the beginning stages of it. But that's what I mean by that. I mean, players, at the moment, we don't have an official definition of what means high skill scenarios, but there is such a thing, and we're looking forward to define it better in the future. High skill context, tournaments, particularly tier 9 and 10, yeah, those kind of things.
One thing I did forget to do, that I promised I would do, is we had the SSE announced today for the weekend, and I thought I'd just say what that was. So for those of you who are looking forward to playing over the weekend, there's, as always, the 200% XP bonus for your first daily victory with your commanders, and a 50% discount purchasing Caesar with gold, 50% discount on Roman cosmetic equipment, 50% discount on Retentus, which is the Roman tier 5 premium unit, the 50% discount on... There you go. So if you guys are wondering what the bonuses this weekend were going to be, there they are. Let me see if there's any more. Can you give us info about the ranked mode status?
Good question. We're still looking at it. I cannot comment at the moment on this matter. We'll have more information in the future.
Yep. Okay. There's so many. How do you feel about the tournament rules banning arty and stakes? Actually, let's bring up community question. Community question of the... Oh, you definitely don't have the right version of the presentation. It's right. I'll just read it. It was CA. Do you know that heavy arty are killing your player base?
Yeah, it was
Something
a
like
Reddit
that?
post done about approximately 15 to 16 hours ago. Yeah, where should we tackle this? I feel like no matter what I say, Mistro's gonna be upset. So
I think he
I'll
might have
just
just
go-
left. He did say bye, but then he posted another question, so he might still be here.
he was like, "No talk of artillery. I'm out of here." So to answer, to address a little bit that issue, we are looking at your feedback, and we will be in the future addressing some of these issues. Some of you feel very, very strong and adamant about heavy artillery. Metrics suggest to a certain extent. We have metrics feedback as well on how they behave. We will be looking in the future into improving this aspect of artillery, and not only. We're also looking at improving elephants' behavior. At the moment, that's all I can say, is that we will be looking in the future, in the nearby future, to improving both of these unit types. I don't have clear notes for where exactly they will be going, but
It is something we've been discussing internally.
Oh, yes.
Especially recently. It's there's been a lot of discussion about potential changes that could be made, and some, varying in scale between drastic to very drastic.
yes. If you ask me personally, I would like to do, this is just my personal opinion, I would like to do serious changes to particularly heavy artillery. But this is just my personal wish. I don't know if we will actually be able to pull all of what I wish. Like, I don't know if we're going to be able to have the resources to finish all of what I want.
I will be wishing for you, Paul.
Okay.
So... What? There.
We have read,
No, go for it.
as you go forward through that, we have read all your feedback. We've gone through all of it. Every post and every Reddit comment has been read when it comes to heavy artillery. So
and all of the the most popular posts that you guys talk about, and all of the kind of general chatter, that does get all collated and sent out, not just to the developers, but not just to the designers, but to every developer on the Arena team. So a lot of them I know actively read Reddit every day. They read Reddit, they look at Discord, all of that good stuff. But for those of them who maybe just dabble, they also do get like a massive, every week, a massive collated feedback email. And they're sat there, they're forced to read it, they have like their eyes held open. It's very Clockwork Orange.
I would like to add, when it comes to that while we understand some of your frustration, is very important for the purpose of keeping an open and constructive discourse. You guys have to be able to give us constructive criticism, and sometimes I understand. I was a player before, I still am a player. I understand some of you are very, very passionate about these issues, but it's very difficult to argue and to request help on certain issues if all we've got is very disjointed and like passionate but not constructive feedback. Now, I'm not making blanket statements, but for example, again, Mistru and some of the community members have provided very, very precise and good feedback. All I'm politely asking, if possible, is to maintain a constructive discourse about heavy artillery and not degenerate into other stuff.
So, another question. This is more of a Jamie question, because I know he's the leaderboard man. But they're asking about adding tier 9 to tier 10 leaderboards. But I know that a big part of the tier 10 leaderboards as well is that push to get you from tier 9 to tier 10, right? It's the added little mint on your pillow when you hit tier 10.
Yes.
But I know that the leaderboards as well are something that there's a lot of improvements from the community that are being put into the backlog, put into like the preparation stage as well for.
Yeah.
I mean, we're running out of time as well. We're nearly hitting 6 o'clock.
Okay, I guess.
And he's looking a little tired. Bless him. So if you guys have any other questions, if you ask them now, we'll go through a couple more before we end it for this week. This double week, I guess. But it doesn't look like there's a huge amount. At least not a huge amount we can answer. Josh cosplay next stream.
They keep
we
asking for
we
that.
can only dream, guys. As I said, like I don't know where I said this. I either said this last night on Discord or in the Praetorian Discord, but I found a box downstairs filled with costumes.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we're talking
We're
about
in trouble.
Roman armor, like chainmail, like all of
Alright,
this stuff.
guys, here.
But the issue is,
And the producer is now looking at us very inquisitively.
do you want these costumes? The issue is, I don't know whose they are. They're just in a closet somewhere. It's like 10 boxes of costumes. I think they're the Audios team.
Oh no, those are mine now.
Okay.
That was
So
quick.
we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think for now, I don't think there's any questions we're going to be able to dip into at this time. Someone's saying new game modes. We'd love to do new game modes. I mean, ranked is kind of a new game mode. It's 5v5. And that's something we're looking at. But as you can see, like, new game modes take time, right? We took a long time before settling on 10v10 and really ironing that one out. And
Yeah.
people expect a high standard from us when it comes to game modes.
That's what I wanted to say. Is like, again, it comes down to the fine line balance. Is like some of the issues we feel like we can do through, we can release and then like finish the feature through multiple iterations. Some you have been very vocal about that. It's like that's no go, and so we've reacted and okay, we need to. This is not, the community is not accepting of this initial step. Pull back, do proceed with further with step 2, 3, 4, whatever, how many there are for this feature, and then only after. Like again, it's also a gauge to see what you guys are okay with and what not in terms of, yeah, iteration steps.
Okay. Well then, I think we're going to end this one there.
Alright.
Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.
We hope you are looking forward to the patch next Thursday. And we will see you in 2 weeks' time with
Yes, sir.
whatever the next patch is.
It's very likely again balance, but
All right. Thank you very much, guys.
thank you. See ya.